Hello, hello, it's Unit 1, Lesson 7, and today we're British. We only have one objective: multiply and divide rational expressions. Ought to be short and sweet, let's get to it. Alright, seriously, who was going to be driven crazy if I kept doing that? Because I could have kept going for a while. But anyway, let's say you have negative 7x squared over 5y. Oh no, there's variables all over the place. Times 3y, well, try to make it a 3. What just happened? Crazy stuff. Times 3y to the 5th over 14x squared. Okay, this is a multiplication of two rational expressions. In other words, two fractions that we're multiplying. Well, as you'll recall, when we multiply fractions, we just multiply straight across, top times top, bottom times bottom. So one way you could do this to maybe make it simpler for you is to just list everything out on the top and everything out on the bottom, and then start canceling out anything you could. You may see a lot of the stuff that cancels already, like for instance, you'll see that, well, let me just highlight. We've got an x squared up here and an x squared down here. Well, those are going to cancel each other out. And then we've got a y to the 5th up here and a single y down here. Well, so one of these, this one y is going to cancel out one of these 5 y's and make that a y to the 4th. And then the other thing we've got going on is this 7 and this 14, which will reduce to 1 and a 2. But if you didn't see all that originally, then here's what I'm saying you can do. Let's write out everything that we see. I see a negative 7 times, and I'm going to put the numbers in front, so I'm going to bring this 3 here. Remember, multiplication is commutative, so I can switch around the order. It doesn't affect anything. Times x squared, which is just x times x, times y to the 5th, which is y times y, times y, times y, times y. All of that over, what do we have on the bottom? We've got 5 times 14 times, we've got only 2 y's, I'm sorry, 2 x's, x squared. I'm just putting the x's first and the y's second, just to keep everything lined up. And then we've only got a single y. So now by doing it this way, we can quickly see what we can get rid of. I see that I can come in here and cancel out both of those x's and a single y. And then I also see, okay, I've got a 7 and a 14. Well, let's make that 7 a 1 and that 14 a 2 to reduce that. And so now, what do we have left? This would be our final answer, because we can see we can't reduce anything else. We have, don't forget that negative sign is still up there, negative 3 y to the 4th, because everything else on top was gone except for the 3 and the 4 y's, over what's left on the bottom. We have a 5, we have a 2, and all the variables are canceled. So 5 times 2 is 10, and that's our answer. That's as simple as we can get it. Negative 3y to the 4th over 10. Okay, now that's the simplest case, where there were no plus or minus signs involved in any of the expressions. But of course, you know I'm not going to leave it at that. I wouldn't dare. X squared plus x over 3x times 6 over 5x plus 5. Now let's see what we have going on here. Anytime you have these pluses and minuses, you want to look and see, is there something I can factor out? Is there a GCF? And yes, there is in both cases. Again, I'm going to go ahead and write this as one single fraction. There's no reason to be distracted by the multiplication symbol in the middle. We know that we're just going to multiply top times top anyway. So I've got x squared plus x. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll do it in 2 steps. We'll leave them separate for now. X squared plus x, what can I pull out? I can factor an x out of both of those terms. So if I factor out an x, what am I left with? Well, x squared divided by x is x. And x divided by x is 1. Now on the bottom of that fraction, 3x, I can't really do anything with that. So that's all I have. Now I have 6 over 5x plus 5. I can factor a 5 out of both terms, and that leaves me with x plus 1. Okay, now, like I said, you can go ahead and combine this into one fraction. Well, maybe just go ahead and do it this way. Save yourself time and space. And just put the multiplication dot like that, because it means the exact same thing. So now we've got one big fraction with some stuff on top, some stuff on bottom. We want to look and see what can we get rid of. Well, I can get rid of these x plus 1's. Remember, everything's being multiplied at this point, so there's no plus or minus signs anymore except inside the parentheses, which means I can cancel out as I need to. Then I've got x's also. I've got this x and this x that can go away. And now notice what I'm left with. All that's left on top is a 6, and all that's left on bottom is 3 times 5. Well, I can reduce the 6 and the 3, right? 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 3 divided by 3 is 1. So after all of that, what this reduces all the way down to is 2 over 5, or 2/5. I was able to get rid of all the variables and all of the extra mess, and it simplifies to 2/5. Now, I think we would all agree that 2/5 is a lot simpler than that original expression we started with. So ain't that fancy? Yeah, it sure is. Alright, let's do one with division. I'm going to give you, I'm looking at my notes here to get myself a problem I like. That one's already factored. How nice of me. Okay. Now, let's remind ourselves of something here about division in general. Division by fractions. Let's forget this problem for a second and come over here to this example. I'm going to say, let's say you have 2/3 divided by 5/7. Remember that when you divide by a fraction, you do as Missy Elliott would do. Ah, you didn't know Missy Elliott knew anything about math, did you? Oh, but she does. You put your thing down, flip it, and reverse it. You put your thing down, you flip it being the second fraction, and you reverse it being the sign. Alright, I realize that's a bit weak of a connection there, but I just like referencing Missy Elliott. But what you probably all do remember is keep, change, flip. That's what you're more used to. When you have two fractions and you're dividing, instead of dividing, you keep the first fraction, alright, so it doesn't change. You change the sign from division to multiplication, and you flip the second fraction. So 5/7 became 7/5. Keep, change, flip, or the Missy Elliott version, put your thing down, flip it, and reverse it, which, of course, I prefer, because after all, it's your primitive quantienthomer. Alright. Yeah, you didn't think I knew that, did you? No, but I do. Go back and listen to the song, and I think you will agree that is exactly what she says. Alright. So now, let's come back to our problem. I'm just gonna write it down underneath here. I don't know why I just erased all those arrows. So we're gonna rewrite our problem as a multiplication problem. X minus 1 times x plus 2 over 10. We keep the first fraction. We change the sign to multiplication. We flip the second fraction. So don't get freaked out by division. Just change it to a multiplication problem and then work it the exact same way as all of the other multiplication problems. Now as you look at this, the top left is already factored. You see we've got a 5 and a 10 that'll reduce, and the only other thing we need to do is we need to factor this 2x plus 4, which is easy to factor because all we have to do is factor out a 2. So when we do that, I'm going to go ahead and write this all out here. We've got x minus 1 times x plus 2, and of course that's being multiplied by 5 on the top of the other fraction, over 10 times, well, we factor the 2 from the 2x plus 4, and that leaves me with x plus 2. So what can I get rid of? I can get rid of x plus 2's. That makes us happy. And now notice what else I can do. If you go ahead and, well, I got ahead of myself there. Alright, you can't do what I was about to say, so scratch that. But what you can do is, as if you can read my brain, you don't even know what I was about to say. Sorry, I had a little crazy moment there in my head. Good thing it stayed in my head. What you can do is you can have this 5 and this 10 reduce. 5 goes into itself once, 5 goes into 10 twice, and what are we left with for a final answer? We are left with x minus 1 on top, and on the bottom we have 2 times 2, which is 4. There is my final answer. Alright, we're going to do uno mas and be done. One more example, that's it. Yeah, this one's snappy. I like it. And so do you, because you don't like having to listen to me for longer than necessary. I can't imagine why. I'm very pleasant, babbling on and on to myself. Alright. Wow, that took a while to write. Okay, so this looks like fun, right? Of course it does. There's a lot of factoring that's going to happen here, but the one I want us to focus on is in the upper left corner. I want us to focus on this. As you'll see, this is something you should be very familiar with by now. We've done it in multiple lessons. You've got a trinomial, you've got a leading coefficient that's a 2, and there's no GCF I can factor out. That tells you you're going to factor by grouping. So let me just come over here to the side first, and let's look at that before I do anything else. So we've got a times c, which is 2 times 5, which is 10. So now I need to take 10. What makes 10? Well, we've got 1 times 10, or we've got 2 times 5. And I need a pair that I can make negative 11x out of. I need that middle negative 11x. Well, looks like I'm going to have to use 1 and 10 and make them both negative. Remember, when I multiply them, they've got to be a positive. So they've got to both be negative. That will make them add to negative 11. Bueno. Capiche? Super. So when I rewrite this, this is going to be 2x squared. Now let's see, how do I want to write that? I'll put the 10 first. Minus 10x, it really doesn't matter. You can do it either way. Minus 1x, and I'll go ahead and put the 1 on there, even though it's not necessary, plus 5. And that's all over. Now what happened in our other one? Well, we'll do that in the next step. I'll leave it alone for now. 5x minus 25. You can see that we're going to factor a 5 out of that, but we'll do it next. And now let's flip. Let's change our sign to multiplication and flip the second fraction and make it 10 over 4x minus 2. If my x would cooperate. Okay, now we've got to do quite a bit more here. We've got factoring that's going to go on in 3/4 of this, right? Because we've got some factoring here. Let me put in these parentheses, and again I've got a minus 1x, so I'm going to change that to plus a negative and put the parentheses around that. Oh gosh. And then of course we're going to factor the two denominators as well. So here we go. In this top one, let me go sideways with it. What can I factor out of 2x squared minus 10x? They're both divisible by 2, and they're both divisible by x, which leaves me with x minus 5. Alright, now notice that looks almost identical to the second set of parentheses already, except that the signs are switched. So I just need to factor out a minus 1, and that will leave me with x minus 5 again. Well, I should not have gone sideways because I don't have room to write my 10. Well, poo. Let me recopy that down here. I apologize. Thought I was going to be able to squeeze that in, and then I started writing like a ginormatron. Yes, a ginormatron. That's correct. Over, now let's go ahead and factor the 5x minus 25. I'm going to factor out a 5, and that leaves me with x minus 5, and this is being multiplied by 10 over 4x minus 2. What can I do there? I can factor a 2. 4x divided by 2 is 2x, minus 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay, now I am going to go sideways this time. Okay, in the upper left, we have our we have our common factor here of x minus 5, right, that we're going to pull to the front. We're going to now factor that out of each term, and that leaves me with x minus 5 times the first the first term, all that's remaining is a 2x, minus, and the second term, all that's remaining is that 1. And of course, this is all being multiplied by 10, which is in the second fraction, over 5 times x minus 5 times 2 times 2x minus 1. We're just going ahead and writing it all as one big fraction now. And now we can get to canceling. We've got a lot of fun stuff to do here. This one's fantastic. It'll make you so happy. Or at least it'll make me happy. And then it'll just make you think I'm weird for being so happy about math. 2x minus 1 over 2x minus 1, canceled. X minus 5 over x minus 5, also canceled. Well, that's nice. I just got rid of all my variables. Notice, what do I have remaining? I have 10 on top. And I have, well, on the bottom I have 5 times 2, which is also 10. So my answer, after all of that, is 1. You should be excited. Everything canceled out, and it equaled 1. How crazy. All right. Sorry I got a little pumped there about factoring and reducing and all that good stuff. But we are done with Unit 1, Lesson 7, and you are ready for the assignment.